You're listening to Shoe In, covering the ins and outs of all things footwear, from sneakers to heels, loafers to slippers, and every type of shoe in between. Brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. And now your footwear insiders, Matt Priest and Andy Polk.
Folks, welcome back to the show. Matt, welcome back to the show. Jasmine, welcome back to the show.
Hey, guys.
Andy Polk, welcome back to the show. Thank you very much, Andy. You're welcome very much, Andy. Awesome.
Too many Andys for me.
Andy, doctor.
Which Andy should I talk to?
Look in the middle. So if you start seeing multiple Andys,
right.
always look in the middle. That's always the guiding light that I focus on.
All right.
So, folks, welcome back to the show. This is the Shoe In Show. This is not the sit-in show. If you're looking for kind of protest nature,
Go
this
away.
is not the show for you. This is about shoes, not sitting in. Shoe
Not
in.
at all.
Completely different.
Totally different.
Now, if you want to sit in and wear shoes, maybe this is a show for you as well.
Interesting.
But, either way.
Either way.
So, this show really is about looking a current look at what we're hearing and from different people in the industry, different executives, and also looking forward to what we think is coming down the pike, and that is sustainability.
Ah, the big S word.
Yes.
With many, many, many different ways in which you can define it.
Exactly. I think it's like when you're sustainability, you got to clap it out. You know?
Syllables, yeah, exactly.
Sustainability. There's a lot there. There's like 5 or 6. I can't even count. Can't even count that high.
Yep.
It's a big word.
Exactly.
And no one knows what it means.
Except when you define it for yourself.
Well, you must define it, right? So I think this is something that keeps coming up in our conversations. And in some ways, it's exactly like social compliance was many, many years ago when you first started out and you started hearing working hour issues and factory labor issues and conditions and problems and how we start to address all those issues with our factory workers in production. This is kind of the same thing. It's coming. It's starting to bubble up a little bit more. You have a lot of eco groups who have been talking about this for a long time, and they come at it from one way. And then it kind of from Europe, I would say a lot of people in Europe now, when we talk to people that are European in the footwear industry, there's a lot of issues and concern about waste.
Yep. Big time.
So they come up from a little bit different perspective of, waste management and issues around that. And then you have other people who are focused on, just the product in general, making it sustainable, using new innovative materials to connect with the consumer.
Yeah.
So there's all these multiple ways that when we talk about sustainability and what that is, again, to your point, you have to define it for yourself and what you're trying to do. But now we're starting to see in the marketplace a lot of shoes being marketed as sustainable.
Yeah. I'm wearing a pair right now. I got the Parlay for the Oceans Adidas collab, where they went and took plastic bottles from the ocean and they created a shoe upper with it. And I'm wearing them. They're quite comfortable. And that is a process that's been determined to be sustainable. It's an extension of the life of a product or of a waste material, but at the end of the day, the shoe will probably sit in my closet for many years. But beyond that, once I'm dead and my kids divvy it out and donate
It's got really dark very quickly.
it will go to a landfill, which is where it was originally headed. So that's just one aspect of it. How do you make things beyond the land? How do you not even go close to a landfill?
Right.
And we haven't gotten there yet because let's face it, production of footwear is labor intensive. It takes a lot of different materials and processes, and it's not very sustainable in and of itself. And so you have to you got to kind of you got to Fleetwood Mac and go your own way. You got to figure out kind of that one lane you want to pick and to define sustainability for your customer, and hopefully they buy into it. I
think, too, we've been talking a lot about sustainable materials, especially on footwearinnovation.com, our kind of micro website that we put out there, bing, bing, which we post videos. Tiffany Beers does our original content every couple of weeks. She's been on this show, and she's doing original content for Shoe In Show as well.
Right.
Every couple of weeks coming on and talking about different innovation she sees. And she's been focusing a lot on material innovation as well, because that seems to be, a couple of years ago, the innovation in the industry when you walked around Effin Platform or Fanny was comfort. So the new innovation is comfort, like new foam that you're adding in or new insole, something like that. And now I think you're starting to see a shift where I think in 2019, marketing is really going to kick up on the sustainability issue. And it's just, using different materials like cotton and corn in different ways, and using trees, and using ocean waste and bottle caps and all these different things that are going to start to pop up from all the different brands out there, especially it's mainly athletic space. Let's be honest. I mean, kind of fashion sense is still very much leather or synthetic leather. But even the synthetics, I think, are starting to become a little bit more sustainable. The forward-thinking suppliers are trying to strip out, kind of oil and fossil fuels out of what they're doing with it, which is extremely hard to do to find replacements. Adidas just announced that they would be kind of doing a replacement of all their plastics, which is extremely hard to do.
Right.
And the material team there, I'm sure, is freaking out of trying to execute against that.
Yeah.
But as we keep talking about these issues and these things, FDRA, led by our board, which comprises of many of the leading companies in our industry, have kind of said, let's do our own initiative on sustainability that actually can be meaningful, right? So there's a lot of different groups out there doing meaningful things on sustainability, but sometimes it's very hard for even a startup brand or a mid-level brand that doesn't have a lot of money to do something meaningful in this space. And even sometimes the groups who are doing sustainability have there's a high membership fee and gaining access to those groups and their information flow. So our board was like, we actually wanted to narrow in on something specific that we can do that's meaningful and matters for our industry, that anybody and everybody can get involved in.
Yeah, this is a weird time, Andy, because it's important to have critical thought when it comes to sustainability, because it's being defined for us, and it's not always sustainable. When you think about the uppers of material, sometimes the different processes you have to adopt to drive quote unquote sustainable materials to upper materials is actually less sustainable. It uses more water, uses more waste, and so the production process is not that sustainable and not that good for the environment. You think about taking bamboo and making that into an upper. And so how do you, what's the unintended consequence of calling something sustainable and working towards that sustainable material when the production process is even worse than it was before? And so for us, it's figuring out what's the return on investment on shoe waste in particular. And knowing that China is implementing new environmental policies, which may or may not be enforced, as we know, in China, the question is, what's the return on investment for factories to think about recycling and selling their waste once they're done producing shoes? And so that's what we're going to be doing in 2019. We're not going to unveil it all here in this episode, but we've got a lot of cool things we're working on in the sustainability space. We're going to be critical thinkers on it. That's what the Tiffany videos are about on shoe innovation or footwearinnovation.com. That's also thinking about how it polls, because as I tell a lot of people, I think it polls like Made in America. When you go to a consumer and says, hey, do you want a sustainable pair of shoes that when you buy them, birds will sing and children will have smile on their faces?
Will dogs bark?
Or do you, they will. Or do you want to go and get this dumpster fire footwear and buy that? And everyone's like, of course I want the sustainable shoes.
I don't know. The dumpster fire sounds real edgy. Will it burn my feet?
Just call over. We're going to ask somebody else this poll question. And so all of us say, yeah, we want the sustainable footwear. Just like if you say, do you want a pair of shoes made by Americans or one? But when it comes down to the colorway, functionality, price point, location, ease of getting access to the product, all those things trump, what's sustainable. And so we want to be critical thinkers and doing the best we can on the back end, on the production side is what we're focused on.
So exactly right. And I think part of 2019 when it's coming up, I think you'll start to see more marketing people use sustainability in their campaigns, and I think it will then behoove the sourcing teams and the production teams to figure out how to actually incorporate sustainability into their models, right? So it'll be driven from a consumer facing, and it'll be driven back into our backroom operations. And so part of our message today really is you need to think about it. Your communication teams and marketing teams need to communicate it properly. They don't need to mislead consumers saying that something may be sustainable when it may not be.
Right.
And in another way, consumers may think of sustainability in ways that you don't anticipate. So you have to kind of define that specifically, not leave it kind of vague if you're going to market that way. And then in the same way, the backroom operations have to execute that,
right.
And make sure that it's fully, fully defined, well defined for the consumer. So there's no question as to what you're talking about. This is sustainable X, Y, and Z within that marketing. So, but with that, part of broadening this discussion is there is a kind of a new shoe company out there that's been doing really well in this space and kind of has built their marketing and their product at the same time around this idea of sustainability.
Yeah, Allbirds is a company that's kicking butt and taking names. It was the brand of the year at the Footwear News Achievement Awards in late 2018. They've been in existence about 2 years, and what's cool about Allbirds is the fact that they have a simple model. It's not a simple shoe. No shoe is simple, but it's simple to understand in the fact that they search for sustainable materials, and they have a select amount of types of shoes, and they're economically accessible. And so they have a clear and concise story on sustainability. They've defined it from their point of view, which isn't wrong. They have a great looking product, and it's economic and it's affordable. And so all those things kind of come together for them to be a real disruptor in an industry that needs some disruption, if you will. So we had co-CEO and founder Joey Zwillinger, who is outside the shoe. He's not a shoe guy. And so that creative energy, that kind of outsider information and influence was so important, I think, to their success. So coming in with a background in environmental sustainability, material development, those kinds of things, Joey kind of laid the knowledge on us earlier in 2018 at our sourcing event. And I think we're going to kind of peel back that curtain for our shoe-in listeners have access to that to that conversation. And I think it's a really great conversation on the ways in which Allbirds is thinking about sustainability and then executing against that plan. Right.
So this is from a speech from the 2018 sourcing summit that we held in New York in the summer. He is reading off a PowerPoint deck, so if he refers to any slides or any videos, just know that we cut out the audio so that everybody who could not be there can hear it now. But we do think the conversation around their product and around how they're talking to consumers and thinking about new ways of producing sustainable shoes is something that all brands can take something from and incorporate in. So let's roll it.
I'm an optimist. I think I have to be in choosing to start a company like this from scratch. And but I do think one of the things I pull out from Andy's talk and some of the cynicism around some of the newfangled technology that's there is a lot of what we think about is innovation and how we get this right back to sourcing and product design and product development. Is that innovation is often thought of as adding a lot of new stuff and new technology. I think we've taken a focus in the footwear industry that has been, it's a pretty crowded space, as you guys all know. It's very competitive. And so we've tried to differentiate by actually taking a lot of the things away. And some of the trends that we saw was really focused on, as people are looking at their phones and millennials are buying more online, they're working online, they're working from home. And so that change in behavior has meant that the wardrobe needs to keep up. And he mentioned the word athleisure. I also despise it. But it is true that people are changing their apparel and they also need to change their footwear. So one of the things that we thought about was thinking about how do we then connect a brand to these kinds of people who are focused on doing something a little bit different. They need apparel that transitions through multiple different activities. It's not just a pair of leather shoes when you go to work and then slippers and comfortable shoes when you go home, but it's something that can transition through a whole lots of activities. So that was one of the early premises of our business. And I think that lady that has the staff pick on the wine shelf, it is really difficult when you go to a wine shop to figure out what the hell you want and which wine bottle to buy. And I think the same thing is true in a footwear store and a shoe store. And I think some of the things about doing a lot more with a lot less is something that we can all take a little cue from. So how we start, and to talk about sourcing, I don't think I can disconnect it from our mission as a company. And we talk about making better shoes in a better way. And better shoes in a better way for us means the better way being sustainable material and reducing a primary focus on reducing carbon footprint and also water use, but doing that in order to make better products. And I think that's something where we've fully aligned our vision of creating a large brand in the shoe industry and doing that in a way where we hope that every time somebody buys a pair of Allbirds, they're doing something better for the planet. And if we can do that, it means that the bigger we are, the better the planet is. And that's something that we felt we could drive a great employee base, we could drive resonance with millennial consumers and others. So this is the starting point for everything we do from sourcing. And then when we focus it and we move it into product development, how do we actually think about doing that? The comfort on your right side is, that's where we connect it to something that people need to transition throughout their daily activities. And then simplifying and taking things away is that undesign. And making a simple shoe, I'm sure a lot of you are aware, going to a footwear factory, when you have lots of different components, the room for error is bigger, but you also hide a lot of the cosmetic deficiencies in footwear manufacturing. So when you actually simplify a shoe, it becomes incredibly difficult to industrially scale that up and make thousands or millions of pairs of shoes. So I think it's not to say that that's trivial, and that's not a trivial form of innovation, but I think it's something that's important. And then lastly, that sustainable material innovation and how that enables both of those aspects and enables something that doesn't need to have a big logo on the side of the shoe in order to be distinctive on the street. And that's something I think that's given us a good degree of success. So how did we come to this? First, this guy's my co-founder. His name is Tim Brown, and while he was representing New Zealand, that's the New Zealand national soccer team, and he was, instead of playing PlayStation on the side, he was kind of designing shoes as a hobby, and he was trying to sell them to his teammates, and his teammates thought they were pretty shitty, but he did have some really interesting insights when he was doing this, and he really found that, I think it was one day he was sponsored by one of the big guys, and they told the whole team that if they all wore yellow shoes, they'd all get a bigger bonus. And obviously, light bulb goes off that, hey, maybe they're not actually thinking about us. Maybe they're thinking about making sure they get better coverage on TV from a bunch of yellow shoes being worn. And how the shoe industry had focused significantly on popping off the shelf and popping off a website rather than focusing on something that is for the consumer and something that's really simple and provides something that's simple in design and gives you some kind of anonymous luxury that you know you're doing it for yourself. So round about the time that this guy was doing this glorious activity, I was mucking around in this stuff, which is algae, and I was on I'd say hopefully still the early part of my personal passion to utilize the private sector to make change in the environment. And I was doing this from a biotech company where we were engineering microorganisms. Ours was a microalgae, and it would metabolize sugar and sugar cane, predominantly from Brazil, and metabolize that and turn it into high value products for various industries, from fuels to chemicals to food. I happen to manage the chemicals industry and the chemical business unit for the company. It was called Solzyme. And I had this recurring nightmare every time I'd go into sometimes footwear brands, usually in lots of other different kinds of industries, where we had great ideas, we had great products, they were reasonably priced, yet it always devolved into a conversation around, can you just do what I do now and do it cheaper? And I think you guys might feel some of those pressures being in the sourcing and product development shops within footwear companies. And I think fighting that urge is something that's incredibly important, but I found it to be very difficult from a component supplier into brands that already had entrenched positioning. And one of the activities that made me really decide to switch over and help pull Tim out of a glamorous job and into the footwear industry was trying to make a surfboard renewable. And if you can think about one consumer who's probably the most environmentally sensitive out of any group of consumer, you'd think of surfers. They're out in the ocean, they're with wildlife, there's seaweed floating by. And I with the team of people at my last company, we made a bio-based polyurethane foam out of microalgae. And it was very high performing. We had a pro surfer ride it. And then we found out that it was going to cost maybe 10% more for a surfboard blank, which isn't very much money. You'd be shocked to know how little it is. And none of the manufacturers would buy it and make it and market it. And so for me, it was a moment where I saw, okay, we have this amazing consumer that wants this bad, and there's not a brand out there that can figure out how to market sustainability in a way that makes a better product and connects a consumer to what they're doing in an activity. And that to me was a bit eye-opening. And so Tim and I decided to connect our two passions, and his had been on the design side. He has an incredible sense for the consumer from an intuitive marketing perspective, and connecting that was something that we felt was important and that we wanted to sink our next 10, 20 years into, and that we'd be proud to tell our grandkids. And so we forged a partnership back in 2015, and in March of 2016, we came to market, and hopefully you guys probably haven't seen this, so hopefully this gives you a little story about who we are and how we connect this back to sourcing.
What if you set out on a crazy journey to make a shoe out of wool, and in doing so found a way to make footwear that was more comfortable than, well, everything? So I know what you're thinking. Why wool? Because it's the world's most miraculous fiber. Inspired by these guys, we found a way to turn one of the world's most amazing renewable resources into a wickable, breathable, comfort experience that's like being upgraded to first class. We dispense with flashy logos, unnecessary detailing, and a focus on synthetics to create something we think the footwear industry has been crying out for. Something better. The major myth about wool is an easy one, so let's hit it quick. When you think wool, you think hot and scratchy, right? Wrong. This is a completely different ballgame. No offense to the team here, but we're not talking about the jumper your grandma knitted you. Oh no. Our superfine merino fiber is 80% finer than a human hair. So does it matter that most sneakers are made from synthetics and synthetics are made from dirty old oil? We think it matters. That's why we're using something renewable instead. Now, you're welcome to try and catch a sheep and make your own pair, but probably best to leave that to the experts.
Did anyone catch the Make Shoes Great Again hat? So we launched with one shoe, and I think that's to the point of trying to do a lot more with a lot less. We had 4 colorways when we started, and we didn't offer half sizes, still don't. And I think the idea there was to really kind of break the paradox of choice. And when you walk into a footwear store and you only find yourself with one shoe, it's a solution that is curated for you and does have personalization. It doesn't need to be the kind of personalization where you're selecting every color and your lace color and whatnot. So that's the way we thought of it. We did that for a year. We launched a second style on the same material. And then on our second birthday, we launched a new shoe, and that's what Matt had mentioned earlier, maybe Andy did, about trees. And this is a product that we launched in March of this year. So right around our second birthday, and I think there's a bunch of components that I wanted to call out here because I think it's important to talk about the details. We don't talk about marketing. We don't market these materials in any comprehensive fashion because I think this is largely lost on most consumers. But I do think it's important to have authenticity when you're connecting it to a mission, to have every single component being very thoughtful. And look, we're not perfect, so there's a lot of room to improve on this. But the idea of making something exceptionally good from both a product perspective and consumer experience, and also for the environment as a great start, and then continuing to improve is the mantra. So the upper is made out of a eucalyptus fiber, which is one of the most sustainable fibers that you can possibly find. It's flat knit to reduce waste, so it's knit to shape. We use about a half a liter of plastic bottle for recycled laces in each pair. We have a bio-based TPU eyelet, which utilizes a biotechnology process that's done in the United States, made from renewable feedstocks, and is then translated through a green chemical process into a TPU. Similarly with the urethane insoles, that's out of castor bean oil, which is a highly reactive molecule that can enable you to make a really plush and high quality, both closed and open cell foam. And then merino wool liners. And that's kind of a nod back to our heritage for the first product. And so I think that there's a ton of room to improve here, but I think the point is every single component that we do is very carefully considered, and we try to make it the absolute best we can for a product experience and for the environment. And I think also in this modern age where technology is ubiquitous it also means that information is ubiquitous, and millennials are more willing to trust brands than they ever have before, but they're also willing to quickly move away when somebody finds out that the company's not living up to what it says it is. And so I think traceability through your supply chain and understanding where things are made, the provenance of where things are made, and how they're then procured and sent through a supply chain is more important today than it ever has been. And I think we've done as a small company, we're, as Matt said, only 2 years old, but we have about probably 130 people now. And we can't go out and look at forests for our tree fibers. We can't go out and audit every sheep farm in New Zealand or Australia. So we have to rely on extraordinarily reputable third parties, and we hold these third parties to very high standards. And in return, we go deep with them, we buy a lot of material, and we also offer them partnerships so that we can help them expand on their mission. So we started with ZQ Merino, and this is an incredible organization that's actually aggregated all of the high quality merino fibers from New Zealand that's harvested from sheep in the most quality way with the highest form of animal welfare. And they've then marketed that in a premium form, and we actually pay a premium against the commodity markets for wool to purchase from ZQ. But for us, it ensures that we have traceability and transparency all the way back to how the sheep are treated and how the environment is treated and how things are disposed of. Our eucalyptus fiber is 100% Forest Stewardship Council certified, which means that the FSC organization actually goes and audits every single step of our supply chain, from our forest in South Africa all the way through to the finished shoe production in China and Vietnam. And so the result of this in the first 2 years, trees saved, that's been, this is before we did the actual tree shoe, so it's probably actually more significant than that, counterintuitively, but this is mostly from our packaging. Shaved the backs of 50,000 sheep with the great partnership with Buddy in the back there, his organization, for Souls for Soul. We've donated over 60,000 shoes in the first 2 years, and we sold over 1 million pairs. And so I think hopefully this is just a little bit of a case study, but our goal is to, as I said from the beginning, do a lot more with a lot less. And so on the backs of really two styles of shoes, we were able to sell 1 million pairs in the first year. And I think part of that is from our distribution strategy that Andy alluded to, but a lot of it is just being thoughtful about stripping away the things that are really unnecessary. So thank you for that, and happy to take a question or two if there's time.
Yeah, we've got time.
Okay.
We've got mics that will be making the way around in just a
Probably
minute.
hear people.
But I have a first question.
Okay.
So you're stripping things away and you're trying to keep things simple while you're ramping up and growing. Those things sometimes can be in conflict with each other. How do you maintain that mission? And then my second follow-up question is, what's next? So as you're the materials guy and in the sustainability background, how do you prioritize what's next when it comes to product development?
Yeah, I think there's so much opportunity. I think we're incredibly optimistic. I mean, an $80 billion industry, and we're doing things just a little bit different, but I think that difference clearly resonates with consumers. So we're focused on doing a lot more of the same. We tend to focus on consumer problems first. We identify who our consumer is, and we have a pretty clear perspective on who they are. And we look at what they're doing and where we're not serving them well in their closet. And then we look back and we say, what is the material that happens to be very sustainable that can deliver an amazing experience for that use occasion? And so it's really this iterative process between kind of consumer insights and then material R&D, and then connecting that into a great product. And so at that intersection is product development and design. And our product development team and our product team in general, we put sustainability inside of our product team for now, at this evolution of our development. It's not kind of a CSR, corporate social responsibility group within the company. It's actually plugged into the kind of meat and potatoes of what we do to make money. And with that kind of organizational structure, it allows innovation to be focused on sustainability and have that voice scream very loudly, right, and enable that then to trump a conversation when you say, okay, maybe it's going to cost you 10 cents more a pair to make this, but is it worth it? And does it connect with the mission? And will it resonate with consumers in a way that's valuable for the overall business? The answer can be yes. So that tends to be how we focus. And so for us, it's going to be different styles connected to interesting new materials. Hopefully people love them, and focus on continuing to deliver and delight customers with comfort,
Right.
like we have with you.
Perfect. We have a question up here from Catherine.
Hi, I'm Catherine Stein from SGS, and congratulations. You lost me at 2 years in business and shipping 1 million shoes.
Thank you.
And not coming from the space.
Yeah.
So all of us are probably, our heads are spinning, saying, wow. So I have a couple questions. In building a brand, because you're a no name, and I have researched you prior to knowing you were speaking here today, and you are on the map. How'd you get on the map in 2 years? How did you bridge all your core concepts baseline to then, being noticed in the sea of other e-com companies? And are you in brick and mortar as well as or purely e-com?
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you, first of all. So there wasn't like a silver bullet answer, so it's not going to be very satisfying. But we essentially, when Tim and I got together, he flew to my house from where he was living at the time in London, and I cooked him a lamb stew, and he thought that was funny. So we knew we had the makings of a decent partnership. And after the next probably 30, 45 days, we had concocted a 30-page business plan. It never really saw the light of day, but the purpose of the business plan was to make sure that we had conviction around a singular idea. And that enabled us in the next, call it 9 months or so, to say no to the 99 ideas that people from various industries, including the shoe industry, told us was the way that you were supposed to do it. And we just had conviction and said, we're going after this one singular point of view. And that point of view, fortunately, resonated with consumers. And I think because we were offering so little, it was one shoe, and it created and lived up to the experience that we were promising. I think people liked it, people talked about it, and I think it's a positive story when you're trying to change the environment for the positive. I think that's a bipartisan, positive kind of a idea, and so it can really transcend a lot of polarized views and help us reach a broad audience. And I think we then priced it at a place where it was affordable for virtually everyone in the country. We launched with a great experience through a simple online portal, and we knew early on that some of the trends that Andy was alluding to in terms of older people shopping in stores more and that shifting quite the opposite on the younger side of the demographic didn't necessarily mean that online was a better experience. It did mean it's better for convenience perspective because it just shows up at your door. But it's really difficult on the discovery side. And so when you're a materials-oriented company that's focused on a tangible idea like comfort, we had to have brick and mortar. So we started really early having brick and mortar. We have a store just down the street on Prince Street. We have one in San Francisco, and we have ambition to offer a bunch more to people because I think connecting e-commerce experience with a great brick and mortar experience is it's an old idea, but it's something that has increasing relevance today, as long as it's not lost in a sea of other people's shoes where you can't tell your brand story. And I think that's the critical aspect for us.
Question over here.
Sorry, mine was actually quite simple. What was the tipping point? Because you clearly went over a tipping point from a marketing perspective.
Yeah, there wasn't a tipping point. There really wasn't. I mean, I think we came out and someone from Time Magazine said we made the most comfortable shoe in the world on the first day we launched, so that obviously helped. And I think there's been a few other really significant moments for us, kind of from media as well as from well-known people wearing shoes. And generally, what we find is that the vast majority of our sales come from word of mouth, from friends telling their friends that they like the shoes and that they should try them out. And we try to reduce the friction on buying, so we offer a really generous return policy and try to make it easy. So that's it's really just as simple as that.
Time for one more, Scott.
Yeah.
First of all, congratulations on your success. As a startup company, you're really small. So how did you procure the materials that were sustainable indigenous to the regions? Like with a small team, how did you go fetch for the certain elements that told the story of sustainability?
Yeah, I would say the approach that we've taken to supply chain has been one of deep partnership and a very significant commitment to every one of the partners we go with. So, and I think this is true as for small companies and for big companies. I think we've hired a handful of people from larger companies, some in the shoe industry, and I think the best ones have this mentality of partnership. It's not about kind of squeezing for cost. And this goes true for factories, it goes true for material partners. So we basically go very, very deep with a max of 2 suppliers for every key component. And we commit to a very significant portion of our order. And in exchange for that, they give us great R&D. And they give us R&D that will allow us to have something that delivers amazing comfort and is also quite unique because they're actually spending money innovating. And when you treat a partner or you treat a supplier like a vendor, and you're asking them for something and asking them to do it at the lowest cost, they're not necessarily incented to deliver you the best of what they possibly can and to stretch beyond what they normally do. Whereas if you go in and you say, we don't know how good this is gonna be. If it goes up to 1 million shoes, you're gonna make lots of millions of dollars. If it doesn't, we both tried hard, so you got to take a bet on us. And as the track record improves and improves, we get the luxury of having people now come to us with ideas, which is a fantastic result of having a clear message to people. But I think that idea of partnership is something we've taken into supply chain and has paid us back in spades.
Great. Joey, thank you so much.
Thank you guys
appreciate it.
Great. So I think a couple of takeaways. Number one, thanks to Joey for coming to our sourcing summit and speaking and kind of helping. The room was packed. It was 150 sourcing executives from across the industry. We're doing it again in 2019. So hopefully, if you go to footwear, FDRA.org and look up our events and professional development, you'll see it on there.
Yep.
And sign up and attend. But we have speakers like Joey come and talk to us about what they're doing to give us best practices and insights. And I think couple of key takeaways again that we want to just say is this sustainability is going to be a driving trend in 2019. You need to define it internally of what you think it is,
right?
And then your operations teams and your marketing team all need to be on board so you can execute on both ends. Yep.
Yeah, and I think what's so cool about having Joey on and the Allbirds story, and as it relates to sustainability, is that a lot of our companies that are FDRA members have been around for 40, 50, 110 years.
Right.
There's an infrastructure. There's a bureaucracy.
Right.
It's an aircraft carrier. It's difficult to turn. And then you have this speedboat going by that's Allbirds, and it has agility, and it has the ability to respond quickly. And so it's fun to see something catch fire like Allbirds has, and then they can execute against a plan without all the stovepipes and all the bureaucracy.
Right.
And that helps provide kind of best practices.
Sure.
From a newbie back to the legacy brands and companies. Which
but
is
kudos
cool
to them. Their product's great.
Yep.
And they're hitting. I mean, they're hitting. Teens are buying it. My mother-in-law bought a pair, wears them, says they're the most comfortable shoes she's ever had.
Right.
So it's not just that they're selling a sustainable product; they're selling a really good product that is sustainable. And this, you can go back and forth on it. But we know a lot of people out there trying to make interesting, innovative products that are sustainable that don't live up to what the consumer wants for a product, something comfortable and durable and all that. And I think they've hit the right mix of sticking true to their values of sustainability, and then making the product that's really good. So it's hard to do and execute, but they did it, and that's why they won the award this year.
Yeah,
so.
They did. Awesome stuff. So congrats to them.
Congrats to them, and congrats to everybody for listening to our show. You are a winner in of yourself just for the knowledge we just dropped upon you. Folks, this is Shoe and Show. We talk about a range of different issues impacting our industry. We have different folks coming on to talk about what they're doing, what they're seeing, how they're changing and transforming. We're excited as we look forward to 2019 and what the new year will hold for our industry. If you have ideas of what you would like us to talk about, if you have ideas for guests, if you yourself would like to be a guest and grilled on our show, please let us know. We're at Shoe and Show on Twitter. We're on Facebook, shoeandshow.com. And with that, until next time, Shoe In is out.
Shoe In has been brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. For information about FDRA, visit fdra.org.